even though I wasn't drinking a lot, even though I only had 2 glasses a day, I didn't like that feeling that every day I had to have it.
Welcome back to There Is Always a Way, a special limited series from Hope Comes to Visit. I'm Danielle Elliott-Smith, and as always, I'm so grateful you're here. As I celebrate 7 years without alcohol, I'm sitting down with people whose stories remind us that there isn't only one way to redefine your relationship with alcohol. Every journey is different, every path is personal, and every conversation has something to teach us. Because while no two stories are exactly alike, there is always a way. Today's guest is someone whose words have been finding their way into readers' hearts for decades. Laura Zigman is the best-selling author of 6 novels, including Animal Husbandry, which was adapted into the film Someone Like You, starring Hugh Jackman and Ashley Judd. She's also the author of Separation Anxiety, Small World, Dating Big Bird, Her, and A Piece of Work. In addition to her fiction, Laura has collaborated on several works of nonfiction, including Eddie Izzard's Believe Me, and has written for the New York Times and many other publications. Her newest novel, The Author Weekend, was just recently released. I've admired Laura's writing for years, but she has this remarkable ability to tell the truth about being human. Her characters are honest, funny, imperfect, and wonderfully real. I'm so very looking forward to having this conversation and having it feel exactly the same. What I appreciate most is Laura's willingness to talk about something many people experience but rarely say out loud. The quiet realization that alcohol may be taking up more space in your life than you want it to. Not because everything's fallen apart, but because something inside you begins to whisper that there might be another way. It's a conversation about curiosity, self-awareness, culture, and the permission to make a different choice even when no one else is asking you to. Laura, I'm so grateful you're here. Thank you for being willing to talk to me.
I'm so happy to be here, Danielle. It's so nice to meet you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm so excited and so grateful you're willing to have a conversation, and we have so much to talk about because I have so very many questions about your work. And we were talking before we jumped on about the hustle and so many different areas where you spread your talents. But I want to start with the topic of the conversation that we're having for this particular series. I know that you, unlike me, haven't had a problem with alcohol, but you did listen to the quiet whispers, that self-awareness that said, maybe I need to make a different decision around alcohol.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, like many people around COVID, I started to drink regularly. I had been a quote, normal drinker in my youth, by which I mean drinking heavily with friends in college and that kind of thing, but never problematically. And there were times when I just didn't drink at all for years and years just because I had a tendency to faint. It had nothing to do with the alcohol per se, but probably the fact that I, was working and didn't eat all day and then had a sip of wine and a cigarette and I would faint. So I would go for long periods of time where I wouldn't drink. And then I went back to it during COVID and found myself so addicted to the 2 glasses of red wine that it reminded me, I had been a very heavy smoker since I was in my teens. And I have not touched a cigarette since 1999, not a puff, nothing. And it reminded me of that addiction, that even though I wasn't drinking a lot, even though I only had 2 glasses a day, I didn't like that feeling that every day I had to have it. I would start thinking about it at 2 p.m. I would be watching the clock. When can I have it? Is 4 o'clock too early? Well, no, then I'll fall asleep. So I was, and then, then I can't really drive after that, or I don't want to do this after that. I was kind of building everything around the drinking, which even though it was not problematic in the amount, it was the habit. And I knew that if I kept doing it, I would probably go up to 3 a day. And there are all the health benefits or caveats that we all hear now, like no alcohol is, no amount is safe and all that. So I just stopped. I was having some surgery and I thought I might as well just stop. And I don't miss it. I don't miss it. Every now and then I think, ooh, I'd love to have a glass. And then I think I'll get that hazy, icky And then what? Then I'm still, I love the blur. I love that blur because there was so much stress during COVID and so much, all the stuff that happened. And just in general, whether it was COVID or not, you love that ability to just zone out. But then you get the headache and then you're tired and you wake up the next day and just feel a little bit less. So I'm glad I don't do it anymore.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that blur. So it'll be 7 years, July 8th, right? And which is actually the day that all of these episodes are being released.
Oh,
And
wow.
I can still very much remember the feeling, the physical feeling, closing my eyes for anyone who's watching or anyone who's not watching, the physical feeling I would get when I would take a really big sip of wine when I had been craving it.
Yep.
And the feeling I would get as it would just sort of permeate every cell in my body, that it would just ease everything.
Yes.
And like you, it was like that, okay. I love that.
Yeah.
And that was something I had to give up, right? When I was making my list of what am I giving up when I'm not drinking anymore versus what am I gaining, right? And the list of things I was gaining and the list of things that were never going to happen to me again with drinking was much longer than the list of things I was going to miss. Like I was going to miss never having a glass of champagne in first class on a flight. I was going to miss, oh my gosh, I'm never going to actually have a glass of champagne to cheers with my kids when they get married someday. And there have been other things that I've not been able to do. My daughter went to Ole Miss and we would go to the Grove for SEC football and everybody has mimosas and wow, it's kind of a bummer that I couldn't participate. But I'm also never the mom that's stumbling through the Grove, falling down. And to me, that means way more.
Yeah.
So how did you know? Did it really feel like you equated that level of addiction between smoking and you was quitting smoking really so hard that you said, I don't want to have to go through that again?
Yeah, I mean, my addiction to cigarettes was so intense that it's the only reason I have a lot of friends who are sober, or I know, people in my family, or, so I've been around it a lot. And when I hear them talk, and though I have not experienced it with alcohol, I really feel like I can understand what they're talking about because I had it with cigarettes. I couldn't imagine. Cigarettes were my friend. I lived in New York for a long time. I was always lonely, felt alone through my teens, my 20s, et cetera. And cigarettes were my friend. They were my company. They were with me during all the times, all the hard times, all the happy times, just like alcohol. And it was before there were restrictions on smoking. So you could smoke at your desk. You could smoke anywhere you wanted to. And so smoking was very much a part of like just the way alcohol is right now, where it's sort of everywhere. But I feel like I have some understanding of the addiction, not necessarily the consequences of behavior that you have, unfortunately, with alcohol if you're using it or abusing it, but just the sense of like how hard it was to give up. The idea that what would I do with myself in my apartment all those hours when I couldn't smoke? How would I write if I didn't have cigarettes and the habit and the feeling of well-being. And just as you described, when you took that drink, especially when I would have red wine at 4:00 or 5:00 every day. But that first cigarette or that 10th or the 15th or 20th cigarette just had that, that exhale. You feel like, okay, I feel right. But in the end, your heart rate's going, all the things you think are happening or not happening is an illusion. And so I just knew it was better to just stop,
What do you think was it about you that recognized? Because I very much was looking forward to, and my hours would get earlier, right? So I was initially, it's 5:00 somewhere was only a holiday type of saying. Like when I was on vacation, 5:00 somewhere was not something I said on a Tuesday until I did. And I didn't drink on Tuesdays or Wednesdays or Thursdays until I did. Like I really, like you, I drank some in college, but then I didn't have a problem. And it wasn't until I was really in my 40s that I started to use alcohol to self-medicate, to say, oh my gosh, I'm really stressed. I'm having a hard time. That it became a form of self-care for me. And alcohol is really not self-care, but I was treating it that way. And that things became earlier, and I started to think about it earlier. How did you recognize that that was problematic when you said, wait, I'm thinking about it at 2:00 and I'm having to say to myself, no, I can't have it until this time?
That's such a good question. I think when it became clear that it was both a reward and like a balm, like it was both things. It made me feel better if I didn't feel, if I was stressed, if I was anxious, if I was worried, which of course I am all the time about those things. I'm a breadwinner, so I have to always be worried. So it would kind of let me escape from that. And it was also a reward. Ooh, I wrote 10 pages. I'm going to go and get a really good bottle of wine. And I didn't like the equation of those things. I didn't like how it gave me a reason. Okay, I'll go for my walk because I'm going to go to that wine store I'm going to reward myself. Plus it's really expensive, and part of it was fun again to be with people where you could go out and have a drink. Because I was always the one that didn't drink for years and years and years. And I didn't care because I never had an issue with it. So it wasn't a source of any discomfort for me the way it may be for other people who give it up and are sober. I just didn't drink. So people would just pass by me and everyone else would drink. But I loved like, oh, now I can participate. I'm one of the gang. But then I started to drink alone. And so most of my drinking I was doing at home alone every night by myself. And again, only 2 glasses, nothing bad, nothing horrible. There was nothing happened. But still, I was like, this isn't good. It's going to go to 3 and 4. Like, I know if I do it for another year and a half, it'll just creep up because those things creep up. I would quit smoking cigarettes and then I would have quit for a couple of years. I would go back. And so I knew my addictive personality. Every time I had quit cigarettes before this last time where I've never touched it since for over 30 years, I would quit for a few years. Then I would think I can have one. I would have one, would turn into 5, the first night 5, the next night 10. And by 3 or 4 days later, a full pack. So I understood the arc of that I just don't have any control. And I could see it. I could feel it.
Yeah. Exactly why I can't have 1 glass of wine.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Because I know that 1 would turn into 10. And not the first night.
No.
If I met you in Boston and we sat down and we split a bottle of wine and you had 2 and I had 2, I would be fine that night.
Right.
I wouldn't be fine a couple of weeks later. Right. Because a couple of weeks later, I would say, I did it once with Laura. Yeah. I could do it again.
Exactly.
And then I would buy a bottle of wine at home.
Yes.
And then I would buy another bottle, but I wouldn't want my kids to know I'd started drinking again because they're so proud of me, right? So I would hide it in the house. Right. And the second I start hiding it, there I am going back down and developing all the behaviors that I had before. And when I'm hiding, I'm drinking more than I should. And the next thing you know, I have 2 bottles and I'm passing out on the couch. And then I'm back in that cycle again. And I can't be that version of me again. So I know that this version of me has to stick with none, which is where you are with smoking.
And how long did it take you to understand that you just could not dabble or have,
That's a great question. When I decided, I actually went to treatment. When I decided to go to treatment, my goal at that time was to stop right then. And when I got out of treatment at 30 days, my goal was to not drink for 31 days and then to not drink for 32 days. I made no promises, at least not outwardly. Like the goal was not to drink again, but I didn't know, right? I had there was a bottle of wine that a friend of mine had stashed away. And I thought, okay, like it's kind of there as a safety, but I wasn't willing to ruin the 30 days that I had just put in. And for me, it was really important to keep track of days. And there were a lot of people who criticized me for that. A lot of people who are very, at the time, very much in the 12-step program, who were very adamant that I shouldn't be paying attention to my days. I should be paying attention to the quality. And to me, I was hanging on to the days. And this is one of the reasons that I say that there isn't only one right way, right? Oh. There's what works for an individual. And for me at the time, paying attention to the days and doing the right thing for me at that time, focusing on my family and getting through that day and, you know, try to be the best version of me. That was what was working for me. And I mean, I would wake up every day. I'd be like, today's 67. Okay. Now I've got 86. Okay. Now I have 102. And now I'm over 2,500. And I still know, right? Because that to me, I don't want to give up what I've already put in. So along the way, I started to realize that I didn't want to go back to that old version of me. So I would say I was probably about 6 months in when I recognized what the end result would be if I went back. To answer your question, it's kind of a long roundabout way. Yeah. But I mean, it's, I think one of the, you know, interesting things that, and you had mentioned this in a note, we're surrounded by so much alcohol culture, right? I can remember years ago taking my son to a baseball tournament in Cooperstown. And at the time I was attempting not to drink. And I walked into the gift store to find something Cooperstown related. And there was a t-shirt for moms and it was a wine glass and it was tipping and it said, going, 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 gone. And I thought, are you kidding me? Like everything has alcohol on it. And I know there's so many books related to moms drinking wine.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because when you contacted me to do this and I was really thinking about it, you know, I started publishing novels about being single and in the late 90s. And then that was, at first it was just regular fiction. My novel was just a novel. Animal Husbandry was just a regular novel. And then because of the collective consciousness of a lot of women being single and writing fiction about the same period, we were all lumped together as chick lit. And then a few years later into the early aughts, it was mom lit. And mom lit was defined by almost every book jacket having a martini glass or a wine glass, exactly like you said, where it was like the booze was just flowing and it was a joke and it was like all the moms are getting together and, you know, it's all fine unless someone's got a big problem. And a lot of people have a big problem with it. And especially like you've got kids and, you know, you're supposed to be watching. It's just the whole tenor of the conversation became like, it was such fun and games, like wine moms, wine o'clock. And it was very just really diminished what I think turned into a big problem or was already a big problem for people and didn't take it seriously.
Is still a big problem. And I think that for me, it validated my drinking.
Yeah. Sure.
That whole culture. And not just books, right? The rosé all day. I had the hat. I had the t-shirt. There's a local breakfast place that has coffee mugs. And on their coffee mugs, it says, shh, this isn't coffee, right? Everywhere you go, you're confronted with something that makes a joke or a fun and a game about alcohol, right? And so at the time, I thought, it's not just me. Look, everybody's out here having a good time. Why can't I? And it turned into, for me, recognizing that I can't because it's my thing. Like someone else has diabetes. Someone else can't have gluten. Someone else has cancer. Everyone has their thing that they have to work with or around or through. And this is my thing. So I'm never going to be the rosé all day girl. I'm never going to be the person who's sloppy drinking again. And in so many ways, that's a good thing.
Totally get it. Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you for having this part of the conversation. I want to switch gears a little bit because I want to talk about the work you do. I want to talk first about the book that you have out right now, The Author Weekend.
Yeah.
Tell us about the book first.
So the book is about a 60-year-old author, very successful suspense writer on the North Shore of Massachusetts, whose sales are slipping. She's had 14 New York Times bestsellers, but as we all know, success and failure are super relative, so it's never enough for yourself or for the people you're in business with. And she feels like she has to really stay relevant. Her sales are slipping. She's just submitted a new novel to her editor and her agent. She hasn't heard anything. No news is never good news. And she decides that she wants to be like her nemesis, and she wants to have a fan weekend. And her nemesis is very social, very charismatic, lives in Aspen, and is the kind of person that should have fan weekends because people love to be around her. And Faye is not a social, she should not be around people. She should not do this. So she has one, and takes place on an island off of the North Shore of Boston. And these islands actually exist. They're called Great Misery Island and Little Misery Island, for real. And she has 50 women come on a little boat, and there's a resort there. And, as the saying goes, it goes very badly, very quickly. And a fan weekend turns into a nightmare where she's trying to, at first, increase her readership, increase her fandom, increase the love. And it ends up being a desperate attempt to hang on to what she even had before. So it's funny. To me, it's very funny. 4 points of view: editor, agent, assistant, and the author herself. And I don't think it's a suspense or a thriller. I think of it as a novel where some people get killed. And so I had a lot of fun writing it. It came on the heels of a publication. And I think if you're in publishing and you're an author and you're writing books, and each publication is just less pleasant than the one before. And there's a lot of Black humor. And I just had to metabolize my previous publication. And I did it. I had a lot of feelings. And so I wrote this book, and I had a tremendous amount of fun. It was a real catharsis.
All of your books seem to have some humor to them. So how are you feeling about doing some touring and some book signing for this one?
I love it. I think that the business of publishing has become really hard for everyone. It's hard for the people that actually work in it. It's easy to complain about each publication. They didn't do this and they didn't do that. It's really the corporate side of things that's driving it. The people who are still working in it are working as hard as they can. I used to work, and I worked for Random House for 10 years. So I know what it's like. I know how hard it is. And it's hard to sell books now. There's a very thin layer of books that sell a lot of copies and the rest don't. But the main reason you do it is because you either you have a story you need to tell. And, going around to different bookstores, whether there's 100 people or 3 people, it's why I do it. It's why we do it. It's, you meet people that have either just discovered you, who have been following you for a while, who relate to your different topics, who show up, and it's really fun. It's an honor, to do it. I love it. I love to be around people, and then I like to not be around people. But when I'm in the mood, it's fun.
Do you have one of your books that's a favorite over any of the others? Or are they like babies? You love them all the same? That's
such a great question. I mean, your first is always the one, but I think the one that meant most to me was my last novel that was published in 2023, which was called Small World. And it was about two divorced sisters who move in together as adults. And through a series of kind of humorous events, annoying neighbors upstairs, finally come to terms with their childhood. And they had a sister who died in childhood. And so it's both funny and sad. And it was a lot was drawn from my own family. I had a sister who died, who was born with a very rare disease. And so she died when she was 7, I was 3, and my other sister was 5. So we wasn't a loss in terms of a sibling we knew or lived with, or, we weren't teenagers or anything like that. But it was a loss obviously for my parents. And so when you grow up in a home that's grieving,
it has a hole.
It has a hole. Exactly. And so that book really meant so much. That's, I think, my favorite book. Yeah.
Oh.
And there's humor in it too. There's humor in it too, but Yeah.
It sounds like you can't stay away from the humor.
No, I think I think when you're raised in a I was raised in a sad family. And so I think part of me became a little bit of a clown. And the other part of me really, you want to save your parents from their grief, and you'll do
Right.
anything. You'll do anything. I always, when I meet people who have, I think the sibling loss experience is so interesting. It's something that really fascinates me whenever I see stories in the news, whether it's, tragic school shootings or whatever. I, of course, feel for the parents, but I also am always looking at the siblings because I'm always
Right.
thinking like they are the forgotten people in the equation. I mean, all the focus, understandably so, is on the parents of a sick child or,
Hmm.
victims of shootings like that. But it's always the siblings because they've lost something too, and they've also lost their parents because their parents are
Right.
never going to be the same, family's never going to
Nope.
be the same, and they're overlooked in the scenario. And so I'm very aware of that every time there's
Aware.
a story.
Would you say that all of your books have a little bit of personal experience in them, or are they entirely imaginative?
They are all drawn directly from the source. My first novel was called Animal Husbandry, and it was about a woman who gets dumped and tries to figure out male behavior by studying animal behavior. And I used to joke that, like, of course, I was never dumped, fiction, haha. But of course, it was like completely drawn from that. And every subsequent book, whether it was, being single and wanting to have a child and not knowing if I was ever going to meet somebody, and that whole thing, and then meeting somebody and the insecurity that comes with that, and then having a baby and a husband and a family, and then having to go back to work, all the different phases that I was going through and all my friends were going through. So I always start, and then separation anxiety, which was about a couple who can't afford to get divorced. And so they have to stay together, live together. So everything has always been drawn from that. And I always know other people are going through the same thing. And so it's a starting point that it doesn't feel as narcissistic because I know that I'm going through it, other people are going through it too.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's anything that I always hope people could get from a conversation like this is some sense of, oh my gosh, I've been there. Like if there's one little piece of connection that makes someone feel like I'm not alone,
Yes.
that's all I want.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's the same thing that you're hoping with the books. I actually read an article where you said that what you want people to get from separation anxiety is a sense of hope.
Yeah, hope. When I was reading through your materials and what your different podcasts and things are all about, what really struck me that the two things were resilience and hope, and I feel like those are the two guideposts for me too. In fact, my sister's middle name is Hope, and
Oh.
and that was because my other sister was already ill, and when they had my sister Linda, they gave her the middle name Hope because obviously they hoped that she would be okay. And so hope is a big thing. And I think when growing up the way I did, there was not a lot of hope. There was just a sense that we were this kind of doomed. We were doomed. My mother used to call it Zigman Luck. So if I didn't get a job or a parking space or an apartment that I wanted, if something didn't come through for me, it was always like, well, Zigman Luck, because they had
Oh.
experienced the worst possible form of luck. The disease my sister was born with was so rare that it was
Oh my.
like unbelievable. So for me, I've always felt lucky. I've had my books published. I always feel lucky, but whenever there was any kind of bad luck, for instance, when separation anxiety came out, I'd had a long period of not being published, almost 15 years, and it was my big comeback. And the book came out on March 3rd, 2020, right before the pandemic. And if my parents had still been alive, my mother would have said, oh, Zigman Luck, Zigman Luck. But Zigman Luck was also like, I didn't get sick with COVID. I mean, I had COVID, but we were all fine. And so to
Right.
me, Zigman Luck is like, we were lucky. I always see myself as lucky, but I think hope is a big piece of that. You either feel like you have hope or you without
How do
it.
you define hope?
I feel like hope is just a sense of, I think it's really tied to resilience. It's like you have the hope that you can get up and do it again. I've had a lot of great things happen, and I've had a lot of, a lot of obstacles, a lot of things that have either not gone my way or have just been hard. I had, a decade of taking care of both my parents who got sick with cancer and died. My husband had some mental health issues. I had blah, blah, blah. And, it's like, how many times can you just try again and try again? And I feel like I've always had that little resilient, that big piece of resilience in me, that little well that I can do it again. I can do it again. And I think you have to have hope to be able to do that. I don't know where it came from, because I was certainly not raised with it, but to be fair to my parents, I think they demonstrated it. They may not have been verbally hopeful, but they went on and, they trudged on. So
they lived resilience,
yes.
Despite the fact that your mom constantly verbalized Zigman Luck.
Yes.
It's almost like she lived
exactly
resilience and Zigman Luck as a positive thing, but verbalized it as, oh, look what keeps happening, but then kept barreling through. So you live with Zigman Luck being a positive thing.
Yes. That's so.
It's when I asked you how you defined hope, I almost expected you to say Zigman Luck.
Yeah, right. Actually, that's really true. It is. That's so interesting that I've never thought of it that way, but it is Zigman Luck. That is the hope, because I feel lucky.
And what I love about that is that you said, I took care of my parents through cancer and they passed away, and my husband had mental health issues, and you went blah, 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 as though whatever. And those are seriously fundamental, difficult life challenges. But you're saying, I was resilient through these difficult things, and look at me now. I've had books published and this. And I think that's what resilience is. Resilience is
yeah, that
because
so
you've lived through those things. And that's one of the things that's so beautiful, because you've taken those life experiences and you've said, and I have a book that has pieces of me and my resilience threaded through them to show people that Zigman Luck can be and can show other people the way.
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, that's a really nice way to think about it. And I also think, to your point, is how we define success and failure has always been fascinating to me. When Animal Husbandry was published in 1998, it was one of those books where I was really lucky. I got a big film sale in 25 countries, whatever. It was, to me, I had an office job my whole life, so I was like, anything was great, but it was especially great. And it did not hit the New York Times list. And I remember I was working on my second novel, and I had enough money to rent a beach house, and I couldn't believe my life. I was having this great time. And I remember I got a call one day as I was writing my second novel, and, it was back when there were actual phones, and it was my editor. And I picked up the phone, and she was very New York, and she said, I just want you to know you are not a failure. And I said, okay. It was like a Tuesday morning. And It turned out that another book, I think it was Bridget Jones' Diary, that had come out right after mine, had hit the New York Times list. And so she just wanted to make sure I didn't feel like a failure, which of course I didn't feel like one until she said that. And even then I didn't feel like one. But I also remember when the movie came out of Animal Husbandry, and they changed the title and all that. But the movie came out. It was cute. Was it a great movie? No. Did I care? No. I was happy. Like, why would you not be happy? And the movie came out, and it was, didn't get good reviews, and it opened and closed in 2 weeks, was gone. And I remember somebody came up to me, somebody I knew, and he said, so, how did your movie do? And I think I've only had this happen once in my life, where I was able to have a comeback in the moment instead of later. But I said, not good. How did your movie do? Because I couldn't believe that someone was trying to shame me. And so it's how we are, really? You don't have a movie. Like,
I mean, Laura,
right?
I'm coming out of my chair. I'm like, I had a movie. How was your movie?
That is the
How
that
was your movie?
rubric we live in. It's like how do you define it? Well, how do you? I don't care how you define it. I felt really good. I still feel really good about it. And even
As you should. I was going to ask you, what was it like to get the phone call when they said, hey, we'd like to make a movie out of your book. And oh, by the way, Ashley Judd and Hugh Jackman are going to star in it.
well, at first it was Jennifer Aniston and Hugh. But anyway, so how could you not feel? How could you not feel anything other than great?
Fantastic.
Hugh Jackman wasn't it?
Honored.
They pay at the time. They paid a lot of money, and I was just like, well, how could you? But that is how we are trained to think that success is linear and escalates just like this. So you when you go like this, which everybody goes up and down, it's a roller coaster. My career, up, down, up, down, up, down. I'm sure yours is the same, and everybody I know is the same in some fashion.
Right.
And it's always like you hit that down, and it's like, oh well, now you're a failure. Really? Well, it's a natural. You have to go with it. You have to. If you can't metabolize it, you won't be able to come back, and you have to. You have to ride them out because that's how life is. It's not linear.
I look at everything in waves, right? Like the ocean, waves come in and out. The moon waxes and wanes. Seasons, fall, winter, summer, spring. Like it's a natural cycle of life. We are not riding at the top all the time. It's not possible. And I'm okay with that because if I didn't experience frustration and anxiety and stress and sadness and grief, then I wouldn't understand joy and excitement and just the anticipation of, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
And the other thing is, success is not a permanent state of being, and neither is failure. And I put failure in quotation marks because you can go from the down back up. When you're down, that's not permanent either necessarily. It's just you're passing through it to another phase, and then that will ebb and flow, just like you said, just like these tides and all the waves of things is the natural rhythm. So I always think of that when I'm in a particular, which I've had many times of like down, where nothing seems possible. I think, well, it will come back. I mean, it may not come back to the point that I had it at the very beginning, but it ebbs and flows. It really does. And so, success isn't permanent. Neither is failure.
One of the other many hats that you wear is writing therapy.
Yeah.
And I was reading about that on your website. Tell me about that.
So I, had a career in publishing for 10 years. I was a book publicist. And so before I was always writing on the side, but I worked in the business and then I left and I wrote my first novel and finished it. And so I got very lucky that first time, had 4 books, movie deal, blah, blah, blah. And then I hit, the life stuff. And I had terrible writer's block and I was busy taking care of my family and all that. And I had to earn a living. So I became a ghostwriter. And I found that is very hard work, but I really enjoyed it because first of all, it was easier for me at the time because I had writer's block. I didn't have to think of the story. I would work with somebody, and that is hard to work with someone. You have to get them to trust you. You have to get them to tell you their most intimate stories and give you material. And I always joke that the writing is the easy part because that is the hard part. But right. I'm kind of good at that. So I find it very fulfilling work. Mm-hmm. But I was tormented by the fact that I just couldn't write I had 4 novels out and I was like, I just can't believe I'm not going to do it again. And so I spent, as I was ghostwriting all those years, I would make these little videos and I would think, well, maybe something will happen with these little funny videos. Nothing. Maybe I'll write a script. Nothing. I felt like everything I did, I couldn't sell it. Nothing happened. I was very discouraged, but I just refused. I was like, I was in my early 50s. I was like, I just can't believe I'm never going to write another book again. And so what I ended up doing is still doing all the stuff and then trying to write this novel, Separation Anxiety, which nothing is wasted because all the little things that I had done that didn't sell, I took little pieces of and they ended up in the book. And I really do love that book. But back to your question, when I wasn't writing, there were long periods where I just wasn't. But people knew I had a background in publishing and some of my friends were writers. And I started to get asked, I need a session, they would say. Can I buy you a drink? I'm having trouble with my agent. I'm having trouble with my publisher. And because I kind of knew a lot of people in the business, or I sort of just knew how things worked, this is a decade or more ago, I was like a font of information for people. And then during COVID, a bunch of different things happened. I was like, oh, I can actually do this by Zoom. Like I can just, and so writing therapy, and I put quotations around therapy because obviously I'm not a therapist, but I felt from my experience in the business as a novelist who'd had some success and then had a decade-long bout of writer's block, and then, I thought I have this weird skill set. And so I started to do what I call writing therapy. And it's funny because after Small World came out in 2023, I tried to sell another novel. I couldn't sell it. And I just had it. I was so discouraged. I had this great publication. Then I couldn't sell my next. And I said, you know what? I don't want to write anymore. I just want to do writing therapy. And so I, having been a publicist, knew that the only way is to get clients. And I knew someone had to write about me. So I pitched somebody I knew who writes about publishing. And I said, do you know anyone who would do this? And she said, I want to do it. And so she got the go ahead from the New York Times and she interviewed me and my clients. And they took my picture and she wrote the piece. And then I waited. And it turned out that the Times killed the piece because I had forgotten and the reporter had forgotten that I had blurbed her memoir 10 years earlier. I blurb a lot of things I did not remember. So they killed the piece. They wouldn't run it. Even with a note, they just wouldn't run it. And that is when I took to my bed. I just couldn't believe it. But I love the work. And she was able to sell the piece to Airmail, which is a kind of a Tony newsletter that was started by Graydon Carter, who used to run Vanity Fair. And they gave me, the headline was called Zigman Freud. So now I call myself Zigman Freud. But really what I do, if I could do it full time and not have to write anymore, I probably would, because I find it, I'm not a God person, but I feel like it's God's work. I connect with each person, whether they've never written a book before, whether they've written 10 books, whether they're blocked, whether they're this, that, publishing problem. We get on a Zoom, they tell me their story. It's the only thing I do where I feel like I know exactly what to say, or I know what not to say. I know exactly, or I know what to ask. I'm sure you kind of know, you have a sense of what to ask people or how to get to where. And so to me, it's incredibly fulfilling because whether it's one session or 10, sometimes I have one session with someone and they feel like they've just been, other times, a couple times hasn't really worked. It's not like magic, but
Right.
I love it. I love it. It's very meaningful to me.
Where can people find you?
I'm basically laurazigman.com, and my writing therapy is my side hustle. And it's, I have like an online calendar. You can have one session. You don't have to sign up for a package. One of the things I do is like, writing is so stressful, and the sense of, the big thing with writing is a lot of people feel they're either stuck in a book or they can't finish one, or they feel like, if I were really a writer, I'd be writing now. And I always say, I didn't write for 12 years because I was caretaking and I was doing other things. And there are times you can't write. You can't. Doesn't mean you're not a writer. And so there's a lot of shame that is woven into writing, not writing, success, non-success. And so I understand the shame so much that that's a really big part of it. And so one of the things is you can have one session. You may not be able to afford more than one session. I was there too. Like I could never sign up for a package with a coach because I was like, I don't have that kind of money. So I want people to be able to have like one session, and then they can have another if they want to. They don't have to commit,
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you today that you wanted to share?
No, I've enjoyed it. I feel like I don't want to get off the call of the conversation. I want to listen to now I want to listen to all your stuff.
You are delightful.
More than I did before. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you for spending time with me today.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Danielle. I'm really grateful to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you, friends, for spending time with us today. I want to remind you that the new app, Redefining Sober, is out. You can find it at studio.com/Danielle. And the app is for women who are questioning their relationship with alcohol, who are thinking they might want to stop drinking, or who maybe have already removed alcohol from their lives and are wondering how they might thrive in a world that still prioritizes a lot of alcohol. It is catered specifically to each individual, and I'm really excited about it. I hope you will check it out. And until we spend time together again, friends, thank you so very much for being here with us, especially on this special limited series of There's Always a Way from Hope Comes to Visit. If you've been joining us on Hope Comes to Visit for a while, you've probably noticed that many of our conversations come back to the same themes: self-awareness, healing, growth, resilience, and finding our way back to ourselves. That's exactly why I created Redefining Sober, initially as a coaching program for women who wanted to redefine their relationship with alcohol, and now I'm excited to share as an app. Redefining Sober is a guided app for women who want to explore, question, or change their relationship with alcohol in a way that feels supportive, compassionate, and free from shame or rigid rules. Through personalized reflections, guided exercises, meditations, videos, and AI-powered support, the app meets you where you are and helps you build self-trust, reconnect with yourself, and create meaningful change. Whether you're sober curious, actively making changes, or already alcohol-free, you'll find tools, encouragement, and support designed just for you. To learn more, visit redefiningsober.com to get started.